Hello, welcome to Kick Dragon Vids, and today I wanted to do a special study or really a how-to video on how to document when Christ was born. You know, a lot of us, we know that Jesus was born on September 29, or at least sometime in September, and he couldn't have been born on December 25th, but today I'll show you how to document how to get the right date, because we know that it wasn't possible that Joseph and Mary could have made a 70-mile journey through a hill range averaging about 3,000 feet above sea level in the depth of winter, you know, because of the condition that Mary was in, right? And do you think that the Romans would have imposed a census taking forcing people to report and travel to their respective cities in the season that was the hardest to travel? And it is very highly unlikely that there were shepherds found abiding in the fields in the extreme cold of December and in the December nights, you know, because, you know, there is no pasturage at that time. You know, and if Jesus wasn't born, obviously Jesus wasn't born December 25th, but what really happened on December 25th? Well, and how can we document when he was really born? Okay, the first step that you need to know is we need to get to the exact, in order to get to the exact date, we need to know what year Christ was crucified. You know, praise God. And taking into consideration that we have two facts that the Bible gave us so that we can work with. Because knowing the exact year, you know, that Christ was crucified, we know that he was about 32 to 33 years old, and we know the exact year he was crucified. Well, we can subtract the years, and then we know what year he was born. So the number one question right now would be, what year was Christ crucified? So like I said, we have two facts that we can work with, and here they are. And we can go to the King James Bible. I like to use the KingJamesBible.com. And we'll go to the book of John, chapter 19. And here in verse 14, we see we can see there that and it was a preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he says unto the Jews, behold your king. So it was preparation of the Passover. So we know there that Jesus was crucified sometime during the Passover, right? And here in John 19:31, it says that it says there, the Jews therefore, because it was preparation or preparation day, that was the 14th day of Nisan, that the body should remain upon the cross on the Sabbath. For that Sabbath day was a high day, beside Pilate, that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. So there we know that it was preparation day, or 14th day of Nisan, and that the next day would be a high Sabbath, means an important day, not necessarily a Saturday. A lot of people, they make that mistake. We'll talk about that later. And we know the other fact is that Jesus resurrected sometime here in John 20, verse 1. We know that Jesus resurrected early Sunday morning, or the first day of the week. It says here in John 20, verse 1, the first day of the week cometh, Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and see the stone taken away from the sepulchre. So it was still dark. So it was somewhere between Saturday night and Sunday morning when Jesus resurrected. So the question is, again, what year did Christ was crucified? Okay, that's the question. Okay, because because unquestionably Jesus rose again from the dead early Sunday morning, or sometime between Saturday and Sunday morning, right? And most scholars agree that Jesus was around 32 to 33 years old when he died on the cross. So getting the exact year and date Jesus was crucified can give us the exact year he was born. So the next thing you want to do is Google. We'll go to Google and we'll ask when or what year was Christ crucified? Because we want to get the exact year, because getting the exact year can give you the exact date. So here we see that Google says that the crucifixion of Jesus occurred in first century Judea, most probably between the years 30 and 33 AD. So basically they say that mostly everybody agrees that he must have been crucified around 30 or 33 AD. So let's see what dates they come up with. Here we go. So it says right here, I don't know if you can see that. It says scholars, I don't know if you can see that, but it says scholars have provided estimates for the year of crucifixion, and they range from 30 to 33 AD, right? With Rainer stating that the 14th of Nisan, or April the 7th, 30 AD, I mean, that's what he believes is the right year. Apparently, in the opinion of most the scholars, or the majority of contemporary scholars as well, far and away the most likely date was that date of Jesus' crucifixion. So mostly everybody believes it was around April the 7th, 30 AD. And of course another popular date would be April 3, 33 AD. And of course E.W. Bullinger believes he was crucified in 29 AD. Well, we'll get to that later. So the problem is here that all these dates are Fridays. April the 7th, 30 AD was a Friday. April the 3, 33 AD was a Friday. So the question is, do you think Jesus was crucified on a Friday? There are two emphatic scriptures that God gave us that one needs to look at. That'll give that we. In other words, the other step would be to test to see if Jesus Christ was really crucified on a Friday. Well, let's go to the book of Mark and chapter 8 and verse 31. Oh, I think it's right here. And it says, and he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after the 3 days rise again. So when did Jesus Christ resurrected? After 3 days. So right there it creates a problem. If Jesus Christ was crucified on Friday, well, that couldn't have been possible. He had to resurrect after 3 days. Okay, another one would be in Matthew chapter 12. And let's look at verse 40. Right here. It says, for as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So here we see that Jesus, as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights, so was Jesus in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights. So if Jesus was crucified on a Friday, like many believe, or on a Good Friday, they call it, how could it be 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb and then being born on Sunday? I mean, and then being resurrected on a Sunday morning? You know, that's not possible. You know, because we know he was, like I said before, we know he resurrected on a Sunday morning. That's a fact. So how can he be in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights and resurrect on a Sunday if it was a Friday? So, you know, that's not possible. So are we saying God's word lies? No. The mistake is here, back in John 19:31. Here's where everybody makes that mistake. I'm going to go to John 19:31 again. Where's John? John 19:31. It says, the Jews therefore, because it was preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day. See, that's where people make a mistake. They think that Sabbath day was a Saturday. Yes, you know, Sabbath days were Saturdays because that's the rest day, the end of the week. But you have to remember, this was Passover week. And it says, for that Sabbath day was a high day, meaning the word here, high day, meant it was an important day, because the word high in Greek means important. The word Sabbath in the Hebrew, we can go to the Blue Letter Bible right quick if you want to. Let's go to Blue Letter Bible. And we'll get John 19:31. And we'll go into the tools. And we'll see, and we'll go to the word Sabbath. And here in the Greek is the word Sabbaton. And of course it means the Sabbath or Shabbat, or a day a week, a weekly repose from secular avocations. Also the observance or institution itself, by extension, a Sinite, that is to say, an interval between 2 Sabbaths. See, an interval between 2 Sabbaths. Likewise, a plural in all above applications, but it comes from the Hebrew H7676, which is Shabbath or Shabbath, which means intermission, that is to say, specifically the Sabbath. Well, it comes from the word Shabbath, which is this word. This is what it means. It means a primitive root to repose, used in many implied relations, causative, figurative, or specific. So a Sabbath day simply just means a rest day. Okay? That's all it means. It means a rest day. You know, because as we read there, the Bible tells us here in the book of in Leviticus chapter 23. In Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus 23 and verse 5 through 7. It says, in the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. The 15th day, it says, of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And it says, the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. And again, here in Exodus 12 and verse 16, 12 and verse 16, it says, and the first day there shall be an holy convocation. The 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done unto you. So you see, No matter what day the 15th day of Nisan came, it was going to be a rest day. So if the 15th day fell on a Monday, that Monday will be a Sabbath. If it fell on a Tuesday, that Tuesday will be a Sabbath. If it fell on a Wednesday, that day will be a Sabbath. And if it fell on a Thursday, like in this case, it would be a Sabbath. So is it possible to have two Sabbaths in 1 week? Well, of course. Let's look at Luke chapter 6 and verse 1. Book of Luke chapter 6 and verse 1. And it says, and it came to pass on the second Sabbath. What? I don't know if y'all guys can see that well, good, but it says, and it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first that he went through the cornfields. The disciples plucked the ears of the corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hand. Second Sabbath after the first, that means we can have two Sabbaths in 1 week, of course. If that week is a holy week, of course. And if a holy day, one of those high days, falls in one of the day during the week, like a Friday or like a Thursday or Wednesday or Monday, well, that day will be all Sabbath also. So, and then to have your regular Saturday or Sabbath day, that you always have. So that, yes, you can have two Sabbaths. And that's where a lot of people make that mistake. And they say, oh, Jesus Christ, he had to be in the tomb before Saturday. No, he had to be in the tomb before a high day, before the Sabbath, which that day was a Thursday. Let's test that right quick. Can Jesus, could Jesus, look at, I have it here in my notes. You see, Wednesdays, they say that Jesus, to fulfill scripture, that Jesus had to be raised again after the third day, Mark 8:31. And he had to be in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights and resurrect on a Sunday, John 20, verse 1. Jesus had to have been crucified on a Wednesday, as illustrated below. Wednesday, 6 o'clock p.m. to Thursday, 6 o'clock a.m. will be one night. And Thursday, 6 o'clock a.m. to Thursday, 6 o'clock p.m. would equal one night and 1 day. And Thursday, 6 o'clock p.m. through Friday, 6 o'clock a.m. will be 2 nights and 1 day. Friday, 6 o'clock a.m. through Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. will be 2 nights and 2 days. And Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. through Saturday, 6 o'clock a.m. would only be 3 nights and 2 days. But look at Saturday. 6 o'clock a.m. through Saturday, 6 o'clock p.m. will be 3 nights and 3 days. And as you can see, and without a doubt, Jesus was crucified on a Wednesday. So somewhere between Saturday 6 o'clock p.m. and Sunday 6 o'clock a.m., Jesus resurrected. And the story is that Jesus was crucified on a Friday. I mean, is that even possible? Well, let's check. Well, if that were possible, if Friday from 6 o'clock p.m., because Jesus had to be taken down from the cross, as it is written there in John 19:31, before the Sabbath. A lot of people say, well, before Saturday, and Saturday began at 6 o'clock p.m. Friday, according to the Jews. Yeah, that's true. It did begin at 6 o'clock p.m. So let's see if Jesus could have been 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb and be crucified on a Friday. Well, Friday 6 o'clock p.m. through Saturday 6 o'clock a.m., that would only equal one night. And Saturday 6 o'clock a.m. through Saturday 6 o'clock p.m., that'll be only one night and 1 day. And Saturday 6 o'clock p.m. through Sunday 6 o'clock a.m., of course, that only is 2 nights and 1 day. So obviously, in no way could Jesus have been crucified on Friday. As you observe, Saturday would only equal 1 full day. And Jesus vigorously stated that he would resurrect not only on the third day, Matthew 16:21, but after the third day, Mark 8, and 31. Since now we know the day that he was crucified, which had to be a Wednesday, well, the next step would be to look for a year from 30 AD to 31 AD that in which Passover fell on a Wednesday. So how do you do that? Well, yeah, I'm going to show you. Let's go to Google again, and we'll go Hebrew calendar. Let's put 3080. No, I put the wrong one. I put 3080. Okay. And let's see. There's the year 3080. You see it up there, right? Well, let's start with 29 AD. Let's go to previous year. Let's go to 29 AD. Okay, what day did Passover fall in? Remember, Passover is the 14th day of Nisan. Well, if you see there, Passover fell on either year 29 AD. It fell on a Saturday. Let's see. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Passover, the preparation day, fell on the 14th day of Nisan, fell on a Saturday. So that's not possible. It couldn't have been 29 AD. Well, sorry, Bullinger. Let's go to the next one. Next year. Let's go to 30 AD. You can see up there where it says 30 AD, I think. See? 30 AD. Okay. What day did 30 AD fall in? Well, the 14th day of Nisan on 30 AD was fell on a Wednesday. A Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So could Jesus have been crucified in 30 AD? Yes. Well, just to make sure, let's go to the next year. The next year will be 31 AD. You see up there, 31 AD. So let's go down again. And we see that also Wednesday, 31 AD could have been a possible year because we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. See, 14th day of Nisan on a Wednesday. Now let's look for the other popular year, which was 32 AD. And we see here that couldn't have been possible because the 14th day of Nisan fell on a Monday. So that's out of the question. So the next year would be 33 AD, and of course, a lot of scholars believe that was the date that's the year that he was crucified on the cross. Well, let's see. The 14th day of Nisan here fell on a Friday. So it's as we see here, it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which would be April the 3rd. But we know that there's no way Jesus Christ could have been crucified on a Friday. He had to have been crucified, he had to have been crucified on a Wednesday to be in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights, right? So let's say he was crucified on 30 AD. So that would mean that he would have to die. The 14th day of Nisan would be the 5th of 30 AD, of April the 5th, 30 AD. So and then the 6th will be one night, and then in the morning will be one night, 1 day. 7 will be 2 nights, 2 days. Saturday will be 3 days and 3 nights. And we know that somewhere between that Saturday and that Sunday, Jesus Christ resurrected. So somewhere around April the 8th, April 9th, that Sunday morning, that's when Jesus was resurrected. And of course, many scholars don't even mention the year 32 AD. or 31 AD. So we will go with the date. Jesus was crucified on April the 5th, 30 AD, and resurrected on April the 9th, 30 AD. So now we have the right year and the date. So we know that Jesus Christ, everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that Jesus Christ had to have been 32 and a half years old or 33. So, well, of course, the next step would be to know the age of Christ when he was crucified and subtract those years from 30 AD to derive to the year Christ was born. How old was Jesus when he was crucified is the next question. Well, according to the book of Luke, Jesus was around the age of 30 when he started his ministry, right? Here in the book of Luke, chapter what? Book of Luke, chapter 3. Where's the book of Luke here? I think I passed it. Luke 3 and 23. It says, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as was supposed the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli. So we know here that, because this is very credible, because 30 years old was the minimum age required for priestly duties according to Numbers chapter 4 and verse 3. Now the real question, how long was Jesus' ministry until the crucifixion? John mentions 3 separate Passovers that fell in 3 distinct years. Thus, these Passovers are mentioned in John in chapter 2 verse 13, right? That's the first Passover. Jesus was there 30 years old in this one, because remember, he had barely done the miracle of turning the water into wine, right? Here in John chapter 2. And John 2:13, it tells us that, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, Jesus, he started his ministry around 30 years old, and we're going to document that he was born in the Feast of Tabernacles. And from the time gap between the Feast of Tabernacles and the Feast of Passover is 6 months, respectively. So at least Jesus was here during this first Passover. He was at least 30 years and a half. And the next Passover we see is mentioned in the book of John. It's John chapter 6 and verse 4. John 6 and verse 4. It says, right there. And the Passover of the Feast of the Jews was nigh. So there we see that another year passed, and so Jesus would be 31 and a half years old, And from there we know that that there mentions another Feast of Tabernacles there in John chapter 7. And let's see, verse 1 says, and after these things Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him. Verse 2 says, now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. So from John 6, we add 6 months to John chapter 7. We come to the next year. Jesus is already 32 years old. And then we add another 6 months. That would be the next Passover. And that one is mentioned in John 11 and verse 55. John 11 and verse 55. That's the next Passover. And bear in mind that Jesus is still 32 and a half years old. So how old was Jesus when he was crucified? Well, according to the book of John, John 11:55, we see another Passover. Right here. It says, and the Jews' Passover was nigh at hand, And many went out to the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify them. So that's the last Passover that is mentioned. So Jesus was at least 32 and a half or 33 years old when he was crucified. So the next thing we need to do, let me show you my notes right quick. That way you can have some notes here. Jesus began his ministry when he was 30. And then we had, of course, we had the 6 months. And, well, let me show it to you in my notes here. Let's look at that part right there. No, Jesus started his ministry on the Feast of Tabernacles 27 AD. And the first Passover mentioned after that is John chapter 2 verse 13. The minimum time gap between Luke 3:23 and John 2:13 is about 6 months. Unless there is another Passover not mentioned in between. Consequently, if Jesus was 32 and a half years old when crucified, his ministry would start around 27 AD and end 30 AD as follows. See, Luke 23, the Feast of Tabernacles, 27 AD through John 2:13 through Passover. John 2:13 would be Passover 28 AD equals 6 months, right? And then from John 2:13 Passover 28 AD through John 6:4 Passover 29 AD would be 1 year. And from John 6:4 from that Passover mentioned in 29 AD through John 11:55, which is the last Passover mentioned, is on 30 AD would be 1 year. So you add 6 months plus 1 year plus 1 year, and of course that would equal 2.5 years. So what year was Christ born? Now that we know the year Christ was crucified, which was about 30 AD, and that Christ was about 32 and a half to 33 years old, at that time of his crucifixion, the next thing would be to subtract 33 years from the year 30 AD. And that will bring us to the year Christ was born, which would be the year 3 BC. 3 BC is the year that he was born. Is it possible for Christ to have been born in 3 BC? A very famous, ancient, and reliable Jewish historian by the name of Flavius Josephus stated in Antiquities 17:6-4 that there was a lunar eclipse before the death of King Herod. And to check that out, we can go to Google again. We'll type in read from Antiquities Josephus, right? Push enter, and what we want to use is Antiquities, this one right here. We're going to go to Bible Study Tools, okay? This one, we'll click into that. And it's book 17. We'll go to book 17. We'll click on to book 17. It's right there. Click on book 17. And then chapter 6. And paragraph 4. Right here. It says, but Herod deprived this Matthias of the high priesthood and burnt the other Matthias who had raised the sedition, which his companions alive. And that very night, it says here, that very night there was an eclipse of the moon. So, according to Josephus, right before Herod died, there was a lunar eclipse, So the bad thing is that a lot of people, they want to traditionally, many displace this certain eclipse of being a partial lunar eclipse on March 13, 4 BC. Consequently, this has been the fallacious date ascribed to Herod's death. And so that just because there was an eclipse in March 4 BC, well, they put the date of Herod's death around 4 BC. I mean, around 29, around 4 BC, and consequently that Jesus Christ was crucified in 29 AD. That's where they get that year, because they are misled. But as you study, there was a more, and since Herod was very well alive during at least 2 years after the birth of Christ, Matthew chapter 2 verse 1 through 19, many make a common mistake of calculating the birth of Christ before or on 4 BC. As a result, many well-intentioned scholars place the date of Jesus' crucifixion around 29 AD. And Josephus, of course, is not to be blamed. He just simply stated that there was an eclipse or lunar eclipse before the death of Herod, and did not name a specific date for that celestial event. But the fact is that there were two more significant and visual eclipses in 1 BC, on December the 29th and on January the 10th, 1 BC. What is very interesting that the eclipse of January 10, 1 BC was quite visible in Jerusalem during the time, while the other aforementioned dates were ironically not. If Herod died in 1 BC, it is very possible that Jesus was born in the year 3 BC. Because Herod had sent to kill all the children from 2 years old and under, when he felt that the wise man had made a mockery out of him. As it is written there in the book of Matthew, let's go back to Matthew chapter 2 and verse 16. It says, then Herod says, when Herod saw that he was mocked of the wise man, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise man. So it says there, he slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under. So if Herod died in the year 1 BC, what is 1 BC minus or plus 2 years? Or minus 2 years exactly. 1 BC minus 2 years would equal 3 BC. It is the year, the true year Christ was born again, 3 BC. And another significant fact is that, as you remember from the last video, the last time we saw the sign of September 23rd, with Virgo and the sun and in her head, or clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and the planet Jupiter in the womb, the king planet, and with Mercury and Venus and Mars, at the head. We saw that in September the 11th, the year 3 BC. And as we're going to document, that is the year and the month that Christ was born. So now that we have the year of the birth of Christ, what is the day of his birth? What is the birthday of Jesus? Praise God. And according to the book of Luke, Jesus and John the Baptist were separated by 6 months in age, meaning that Jesus was exactly 6 months younger than John the Baptist. Here in Luke 1:26, here in the book of Luke 1:26, And the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto the city of Galilee named Nazareth, right? And verse 36 says, and behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is 6th month with her who was called barren. So you know, Jesus and John the Baptist was separated by 6 months. You know, if one knew the date that John was conceived, one can calculate the conception day of Jesus Christ and ultimately the date of his birth. And as stated in the book of Luke, now we're going to go to the book of Luke, okay? And we're going to read from here. It says here in the book of Luke, and we'll start verse 1. Now we're going to start reading from here from the book of Luke, chapter 1. It says, for as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order the declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us. And verse 2 says, even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. Ministers of what? Of the word. It seemed good to me, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write unto thee in order. So he's going to show us the order of all, the order of how everything transpired. Most excellent Theophilus. Verse 4, that you might know the certainty of those things wherein thou hast been instructed. So he's going to teach us what happened and exactly how everything happened. And verse 5 says, now there was in days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias, of the course of Abiah. You know, Abiah, of the course of Abiah. And his wife was daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. In other words, she was from the Levitical priesthood. In other words, Zachariah was a priest, and he was in the temple of God executing his priestly duties because he was of the course of Abiah. So from there, if we knew exactly when Zechariah was in the temple, we can calculate when Jesus was born. The day. Let's go ahead and start reading more. And verse 6 says, and they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless. Verse 7, and they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and they both were now well stricken in years. So she was too old to have a kid. So this was gonna be a miracle from God, right? And verse 8, and it came to pass that while he executed the priest's office before God in order of the course. And what was he supposed to do? Verse 9, according to the custom of the priest, the course of Abiah, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. So we know that if we can get that date, we could derive to the year that Jesus Christ was born. You know, because we know that John the Baptist and Jesus were separated by 6 months. So what do we need here? Well, let's go to the course of Abiah. It's mentioned in the book of 1 Chronicles and 24. 1 Chronicles chapter 24. And it says, now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron. The sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died before their father and had no children. Therefore, Eleazar and Ithamar executed the priest's office. And David distributed them both to Zadok of the sons of Eleazar, Ahimelech of the sons of Ithamar, according to their office and their service. And there were more chief men found of the sons of Eleazar than the sons of Ithamar. And thus were divided among the sons of Eleazar 16 chief men of the house of the father, and 8 among the sons of Ithamar, according to the house of their fathers. In other words, 24 courses were assigned to 24 Levitical priests of the sons of Eleazar and Ithamar. 1 Chronicles 24 verse 3 through 18. And each priest had to serve 1 week according to their priestly duties in the temple, commencing on the Sabbath. Thus, these courses were changed every week or every Sabbath. Therefore, 24 courses meant 24 weeks in all. And these courses would commence twice a year, which were at the end of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and at the 8th or last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the 22nd day of Ithanam or Tisri, a Sabbath day. John 7:37, John 23, Leviticus 23:39. As a result, each of the 24 priests served the temple twice a year. The first initiation of the courses will fall by the lot of Jehorib, right? It says right here, and now the first lot came forth to Jehorib, meaning that Jehorib would start the priestly course. He would be there from Saturday to Saturday, and the second Saturday of that week, of the priestly courses would fall to Jedediah. So Jedediah will be there another week, from Saturday to Saturday. The third to Haram, the fourth to Surim, the fifth to Malkijah, the sixth to Mijamim, and the seventh to Hazaz, and the eighth, right there, to Abaya. So the 8th week. So we start counting from the last day of the Passover, 8 weeks, praise God, and you'll get to the week of Abaya. So keep in mind that all priests had to serve all at the same time in Jerusalem during the great feasts, which were the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles, Deuteronomy 16 and 16. Look, this is another mistake people make. Deuteronomy 16 and verse 16. It says, 3 times. It says, 3 times in a year shall all the males before the Lord thy God in the place which, and 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose. Meaning that all the priests had to go to the temple of God in these 3 feasts. Meaning that the priestly courses would pause during these 3 feasts. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's the Passover, and the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty. So everybody had to show up during those 3 weeks, meaning the priestly courses would pause during those 3 weeks. Thus the courses would stop on the Sabbath before one of these great feasts and would proceed again on the following Sabbath at the end of each these three great feasts, so that the priests could serve together in Jerusalem, right? As documented before, Christ was born in the year 3 BC and was crucified in the year 30 AD at the age of 32 and a half. Thus his conception would have taken place in the year 4 BC. Unless it was considered in January. But as you will see, this conception was in the year 4 BC, right? So let's go to that year. Let's go again, and we'll type Hebrew calendar 3. No, we go to 4 BC, right? 4 BC. Because that's the year Christ was conceived. So here we have the Roman year 4 BC, right? And let's go to the Hebrew calendar. The 14th day of Nisan, there we have it. It fell on a Wednesday, and correspondingly that day fell on from the 14th to the 21st Nisan, right? Or the 22nd day of Ethanam, right? Okay, correspondingly that day fell on April the 11th through the 18th. So that week, from the 11th through 18th, all the priests had to go to the temple to serve at once, right? So they would pause. So that's when the priestly courses would end, and they would start again. That Saturday would be the 21st, so that's where you start counting the weeks. To the first week, the week of Jehorib, right? He had to start the priestly courses. That would be The first one will be 21st, 28 will be the second, the 5th the third, 12th the third, right? I mean, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and June the 2nd will be the 7th. But look, we have a special holiday there. Remember the 3 feasts that they would pause? The other one would be the Feast of Weeks, which we have here, Sivan 8. Feast of Weeks, Shabbat, right? So we would pause. That's another week where they had to go and be over there. So we would pause for that week, and we would start again. The 7th would be the 6th. The 7th would be the 9th, and the 8th Abaya. So we would skip this week we would skip that week, June 2nd through the 9th. So the 8th, the 9th, the 7th, and the 16th would be the 8th course of Abaya. So Zechariah was in the temple of God from June the 16th to the 23rd. Okay, so now we have a date. Of course, we started in April 21st. That'd be 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go back up there. June the 21st. Let me see. April the 21st. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, and then we skip that one. Just skip this one. We'll go to 8 because that was a holy week. Remember, June the 2nd through the holy week will be the Feast of Weeks. We skip that one. So the 8th would be the 16th through the 23rd. That's the course of Abaya. So Zechariah was in the temple of God from June the 16th through the 23rd, okay, of June. That's where we get the date, okay? So let's keep on reading there in the book of Luke. So we'll go back to the book of Luke and we'll start reading there, verse 18. Zechariah said unto the angel, whereby shall I know this? For I am an old man and my wife is stricken in years. Verse 19, and the angel answered and said unto him, I am Gabriel, or Gabriel, mighty man of God, that stand in the presence of God, and am sent to speak unto thee, to show thee the glad tidings, or the good news. And behold, thou shalt be dumb, and not be able to speak until the day these things shall be performed, because thou believest not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season, right? So be careful when you don't believe God's word, when it's especially in front of you. Verse 21, and the people waited for Zacharias and marveled that he tarried so long in the temple. And when he came out, he could not speak unto them, and they perceived that he had been seen a vision in the temple, for he beckoned unto them and remained speechless. And verse 23 says, here's the other, here's where we pick it up again. Verse 23, and it came to pass, it says, and it came to pass, it came to pass that as soon as the days of his ministration were accomplished, he departed to his own house. So we know that, let's go back to the calendar. So we know that after his ministration was over, which we know that he was there from the 16th through the 23rd of June, the year 4 BC. It says there back over here in and it came to pass as soon as the days of administration were accomplished, he departed to his own house. Okay, so we know that he could not travel on a Saturday, on the 23rd, because it was a Sabbath. So he had to take off to his house on the 24th, right? Praise God. Let's go back to the book of Luke. And it says in verse 24, it says, and after those days, wait, let me get it here. It says, and after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months, saying, right? So let's go back to the Hebrew calendar. And let's go back to June, right? So he could not travel on the 23rd, which was the Sabbath. So he had to start traveling on the Sunday, the 24th. And and he was well stricken in years. So somebody of that age, well, at least that would take him about at least 2 days for a 30-mile journey. So he had to arrive at his house on the 26th, which you see was a holiday. That is when John the Baptist was conceived, on June the 26th, which happens to be correspondingly the first of Tammuz, right here in the Hebrew calendar. The first of Tammuz, correspondingly to the first of Tammuz, which would be June the 26th, and hid herself for 5 months. So 5 months, July, that will be August will be 1, September 2, July will be 1, August 2, September 3, October 4, November 5. 5 will be 5 months. November the 27th. So now we're at the date of November the 27th. Let's go back to King James. And verse 25 says, "Thus said the Lord dealt with me in the day where, thus hath the Lord dealt with me." Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. "Thus hath the Lord dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach among men. And the 6th month, the angel Gabriel went from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth." Okay, on the 6th month. So what day is the 6th month from June the 26th? Well, we know that November 27th was the 5th month, right? Right here. See it? Let me get closer. So November 27th was the 5th month. So you add a month, and that would be December the 25th. So what really happened on December the 25th? Was it the birth of Christ? No. That's when the angel Gabriel came unto Mary, and to a virgin. It says right there, to a virgin espoused to a man, right? Whose name was Joseph, the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary, right? And it says right here and verse 31 says, "And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son. Thou shalt call his name Jesus. And he shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord shall give unto him the throne of David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and the kingdom there shall be no end." Then said Mary unto the angel, "How shall this be, seeing that I know not a man?" She's not doubting. She just wanted to know how it's going to be, right? And the angel answered and said unto her, "The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God." And verse 36 says, "And behold, that cousin Elizabeth, she also meaning Jesus had already been conceived on that day. And behold," it says, "and behold, that cousin Elizabeth, she also conceived," meaning that Jesus was in the womb of Mary, "a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren." So that 6th month, of course, we can document that it was exactly December the 25th. December the 25th. That's the 6th month. So you add 40 weeks. Let's go to the next year. And we add 40 weeks, right? Praise God. And we'll add 40 weeks to that. December 25th plus 40 weeks. And that would come to the 15th Tishri, that would be the Feast of Tabernacles, right? The Feast of Tabernacles would be 15th of Tishri, would be Sukkot, right? Here, down here, we see the Jews' festivals or feasts, and we can see there the Feast of Tabernacles right here, Sukkot. You see it? September 24th to the 30th. So that's the week that Jesus was born, from September 24th, from September to August the 1st, somewhere in those dates. Okay. What day do I believe that Jesus was born? Well, I believe that Jesus confirms it here in John chapter 7. Let's go to John chapter 7. The book of John and chapter 7. Let's read. It says, and these things, after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him. Verse 2. Now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. Feast of Tabernacles, that was his birthday. His brethren therefore said unto him, Depart hence and go to Judea, that the disciples also may see the works that thou doest. Verse 4. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. In verse 5, for neither his brethren believed in him. Wow. Verse 6, then Jesus said unto them, My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. Verse 7, the world cannot hate you, but me it hateth, because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. Verse 8 says, Go you up into the Feast of Tabernacles. I go not up yet unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come. So he had a specific date, a specific time. It says, when he had said these words unto them, he abode still in Galilee. But when his brethren were gone up, he went also up unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. Praise God. So he went to the feast, but notice this. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, Where is he? And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him. For some said, He is a good man. Others said, Nah, he is a deceiver. He deceiveth the people. Howbeit no man spake openly of him for the fear of the Jews. And look at verse 14. Now about the midst of the feast of the feast of the Jews, or Jesus, it says, now about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up in the temple and taught. Remember, when did Jesus start his ministry? Well, if his birthday was on the Feast of Tabernacles, he started his ministry on the Feast of Tabernacles when he turned 30. So why not start teaching to commemorate or in remembrance of his when he started his ministry? Why not start teaching the day of his birthday, which was in the middle of the feast, or the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles? So when is the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles? Of course, that would be September. That would be September the 28th, the 29th. September 29 will be the middle, or the 28th and the 29th will be the midst of the week. Of the feast. So Jesus Christ, I believe, was born on September the 29th, because that is Michaelmas Day, right? Praise God. That is the day that Michael and his angels celebrated. If this is the case, Jesus' birthday would be on September the 29th, 3 BC. Many years that would mark the Michaelmas Day, the feast of Michael and his angels, for that is when they celebrated the birth of Christ, like it says there in Hebrews 1:6. And again, when he bringeth the first begotten into the world, he said, let all the angels of God worship him. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. Right? Luke 2:13 and 14. You know why? During the Feast of Tabernacles, John 1:14 states, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The word dwelt in the Greek is the word skeneo, and it means to tend or encamp, that is to say figuratively, or to occupy as a mansion, or especially to reside as God did in the tabernacle of old, a symbol of protection and communion. Truly Jesus came and dwelt, or temporarily dwelt, to tabernacle among us as Emmanuel, God with us, and in the flesh, John 1:14, Matthew 1:23, Philippians 2:5-9, reminding us that we ourselves live in temporary homes, 2 Corinthians 5:1. Even as Israel lived in tabernacles in the wilderness, also Jesus lived temporarily as a man, flesh man, and was tempted like as we are, yet without sin, and can help us overcome when we are tempted, for he was in the flesh, Hebrews chapter 2 verse 18 and Hebrews 4:15. Now we cannot tell him you don't know how I feel or understand. To the contrary, he understands even us more, because you know why? Because he was made flesh. You know, an extra special note would be, furthermore, it's a great possibility that Christ's temptation in the wilderness happened right after Passover 27 AD, at the commencing of the priestly courses and before the Feast of Weeks, putting the time frame of the first course of the Levitical priest Jerohim through the 8th course of Abiah. His temptation would be around the time of May of the year 27 AD. Therefore, Jesus would start his ministry at the second ministration of the course of the Levitical priest at the last day of the Feast of Tabernacle, October 11, 27 AD, about 30 years after his birth, Luke 3:23. So it is no mystery why Christ was born outside in a temporary home, tabernacle, in a manger, instead of indoors, Luke chapter 2 verse 6-14. This year, the Feast of Tabernacles will fall from October the 4th to the 11th. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, and your prayers. Special shout out to John Padilla, Debbie, and Harlan. God bless you, and Kick Dragon.